This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
DRC government collapses as lawmakers vote to remove Prime Minister Sylvestre Ilunkamba. Morocco rolls out its mass COVID-19 vaccination campaign. And the UK introduces new quarantine measures for travelers from high-risk countries. Hello and a very warm welcome to you wherever you're joining us. This is Africa Live on CGTN with me, Mahia Mutua in Nairobi. Also coming up, in business, the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange expected to remain robust in 2021 despite economic difficulties facing the country. And in sports, Morocco beat Angola in All-African Showdown at the World Handball Championships in Cairo. Let's begin the top of the hour in the DRC, where lawmakers have voted to remove Prime Minister Sylvestre Ilunkamba from office. This gives President Felix Tshisekedi an opportunity to form a new coalition government. CGTN's Chris Ochamringa gets us underway.
Congolese MPs turned up in large numbers for the censure motion of Prime Minister Sylvestre Ilunkamba. 367 of them voted him out of office. Under DRC law, parliamentary censure requires the Prime Minister to resign within 24 hours.
Le départ du Premier ministre, M. Ilunkamba, avec son gouvernement.
The ouster of the Prime Minister Ilunkamba and his government was not something that we the MPs caused to happen. It was the population of the DRC who demanded it. As their representatives, we had to fulfill their demand. The population realized that the Prime Minister did not honor his promise of ending the conflict in the east of the country and improving their livelihood. And so he had to pay for his failures by being censured.
Last week, the acting Speaker of Parliament asked the Prime Minister to attend the session to defend himself, but he boycotted it. Mr. Sylvestre Ilunkamba dismissed his ouster as a political move with no legal basis in a statement on his office's website. The vote is a major political victory for President Felix Tshisekedi, who has been pushing to form a new majority in government.
We have been talking about change for a long time. It's almost 2 years that we have the current president, His Excellency Felix Tshisekedi. He's been trying his best to work with the partners, as we know what happened, and it didn't work out. So him as a leader realized that with this team or with his partnership with this other side that it will not work. And he decided to pull out of the partnership. And I think it was a good signal. And as is Parliament or National Assembly, we have followed his lead, and I think it's going to be very successful. We are very determined, and that's the reason why I'm very happy. I'm satisfied. And personally, I voted for that.
President Felix Tshisekedi was declared the winner of elections in 2018 after vowing to fight corruption and reduce inequalities across the country. But he lacked a majority in parliament. He consequently signed a power-sharing deal with his predecessor, Joseph Kabila. The government, led by Prime Minister Ilunkamba, was dominated by allies of former President Joseph Kabila. The ruling coalition was rocked with disputes, prompting the president to break it up last December. The censure of the DRC Prime Minister has effectively led to the collapse of the current government, dominated by allies of former President Joseph Kabila. Officials loyal to President Tshisekedi will now start the process of nominating politicians who will form the new government known as the Sacred Union. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
3 peace agreements have been signed between Mali's farmer and herder communities. For years, Fulani herders have clashed with members of the Dogon farming community. One of the groups has been accused of carrying out massacres, forcing people to flee the area. Representatives of both groups have agreed to spread the message of cohesion and calm. They also pledged to allow free circulation of people, goods and cattle. Well, let's get more insights into that story. We're now joined by Phil Ihaza, who joins us from Abuja, Nigeria. Phil, what more details can you give us about this deal? Also, what is its significance in the search for peace in the region?
Well, thank you, Mahia. So what we know is that indeed an agreement has been signed. In fact, it's a 3-in-1 peace pact that has been signed. It's a historic deal. So the three peace deals were signed first on the 12th of January, 22nd, and then 24th of January between the Fulani and Dogon communities or tribes in that region. So it's a huge one because it's now, those both tribes have been fighting over land and resources for several years, for more than 5 years, and it has claimed hundreds of lives and also destroyed lots of properties. Now, this deal is supposed to be able to promote coexistence among both tribes who have been in loggerheads for this long period, and it's hopeful also that the government will help to ensure that this deal stays. It was facilitated by the Center for Humanitarian, it's a Swiss organization, of course, sponsored by the Canadian government, and we hope that the deal works because we've seen a former deal signed about 2 or 3 years ago, and not much was done about that deal, or rather in terms of peace, not much was actually gotten out of that deal.
And of course, Phil, this isn't the first time this has happened. Similar agreements were signed over 2 years ago, but that failed to stem the violence. What do you think is different now?
So what we know at the moment is that this particular deal, because the first deal was signed just about 2 years into the crisis, a lot of research, a lot of information was not actually put into the first deal, and so nothing much was gotten out of it in terms of acquiring peace for both tribes. The first deal was, you could say, was targeted at forgiving each other and trying to stay apart from each other, stay away from each other's way. But this particular deal has to do with coexistence. So there's a lot of effort this time to ensure that, apart from just forgiving whatever crimes have been committed in the past from either of the communities or tribes, this time there is effort towards physical integrity, coexistence. In fact, for the first time since 2018, a batch of Fulani tribe were able to go into the Koro community, which has never happened since the start of this war, and that happened 4 days after this deal, or rather 3 days after this deal was signed. So that's actually a very, very huge progress that has been achieved already from this deal. Also, the UN says that about 850 people have actually fled that region to other countries, and so they've also factored into this new deal the fact that they're going to be able to return many of those displaced people to both communities. There's also going to be respect for community heads and leaders to be able to dialogue for peace whenever there's any kind of breach. And also there's also the room for government of Mali to ensure that this deal stays by helping to mediate with both tribes. So indeed, it's more like an advancement of the first deal that was signed. Some of the loopholes have been closed up, and we hope that this time this deal will promote peace among both communities.
All right, Phil, thank you for that. Phil Ihaza in Abuja. Moving on, a former Central African Republic rebel group leader is set to appear before the ICC. Mahamat Said Abdel Kane was a faction commander for Seleka, a Muslim rebel group. He was arrested in relation to crimes committed in 2013. During the same year, Seleka led a coup in the CAR. This sparked fighting between the Seleka and Christian militia group Anti-Balaka. Since then, the country has been marred in conflict between several rebel groups. The country's army has been fighting these militias as well. Most recently, a state of emergency was declared following the CAR's presidential election. Senior United Nations officials on Wednesday hailed Somalis for their resilience since the 1991 civil war. During a virtual press conference in the capital, Mogadishu, UN envoy to Somalia, James Swan, paid tribute to citizens who've persevered through tough times since fighting broke out 30 years ago. Following the ouster of President Mohamed Siad Barre, tribal warlords disintegrated the national government. During the commemoration ceremony, delegates highlighted the UN support for Somalia. The world body has been involved in humanitarian support, mediation, and peacekeeping missions. Recently, the UN's mission in Somalia has been intervening to ensure national elections take place.
While enormous challenges remain and the road ahead at times looks long and hilly, it is important to acknowledge the progress that has been made. If we look at a range of measures, governance, the functioning of national and federal member state institutions, private sector investment, public financial management, delivery of services, to name a few, Somalia begins 2021 in a better place than 2011, and a better place than 2001, and a better place than the end of January 1991. I also want to stress that ultimately the work of the United Nations is an expression of objectives communicated by the broader international community.
Ghana's former president, Jerry John Rawlings, has been laid to rest after a funeral service held in the capital, Accra. He died at the age of 73. Jerry Rawlings governed the country for 2 decades. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports from Accra.
Always thought about the health and well-being of others before yourself. And it's such a shame that not every individual got to see or experience that about you.
Jerry John Rawlings took power in coups in 1979 and 1981. He later won democratic elections in 1992 and 1996 and governed Ghana for 20 years. While some see him as a revolutionary leader, to members of the party he founded, the National Democratic Congress, he was an anti-corruption crusader.
As a party, his death is difficult to bear, and a huge vacuum has been created that will be difficult to fill. But we are consoled by the fact that his legacy of establishing the most enduring democracy in the history of the Republic of Ghana bears testimony to the principles and values that pushed him into the political life of Ghana a little over 4 decades ago.
Ghana's current president, Nana Akufo-Addo, paid tribute.
There are many who acknowledge him as the founder of the Fourth Republic, a republic which has proved to be the most enduring and stable in our history, and which has witnessed 8 successive elections, 3 peaceful changes of government from one party to another.
The former president left behind a wife, Nana Kunedu Ajiman Rawlings, and 4 children, 3 daughters and a son.
Many people will remember Rawlings as a president who stood with the poor and fought for equity. He implemented economic reforms that many believe improved the lives of ordinary Ghanaians.
But his life was not without controversy. He's been accused of human rights abuses during the era of military rule. Some analysts say he was able to build on his reputation before his death.
He became a border statesman, criticizing even his own government and presidents that were elected from his political party. He was the kind of person who say it as it was. He was action-oriented and populist.
Former President Rawlings' funeral procession passed along the streets of Accra before he was buried at his final resting place, the military cemetery in Bema Camp in Accra. His loved ones say death may have snatched a hero away, but his legacy lives on. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
You're watching Africa Live on CGTN. Here's what's coming up after this short break. A row between the European Union and AstraZeneca over the slow rollout of the coronavirus vaccine is escalating.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent. to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being, and to see patients in a hospital bed and their family members are not there, there's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
Welcome back. Let's shift our focus to the coronavirus pandemic now. Morocco is set to roll out its mass COVID-19 vaccine program on Thursday. It has already received 2 million doses of AstraZeneca's vaccine. The campaign will start Thursday, according to the Royal Palace. The vaccine will be available to Moroccans over the age of 17, with certain groups receiving priority. They include security, health and teaching staff workers. Around 3,000 vaccine locations have been set up. To East Africa now, Uganda is starting its own clinical trials for a COVID-19 therapeutic treatment. The local remedy, named UBV019N, is made from natural herbs formulated by Ugandan scientists. Uganda joins other African countries like Madagascar that have made herbal concoctions for COVID-19 treatment. Isabel Nakiria now reports.
The new treatment was developed at Mulago Hospital Laboratories in the capital, Kampala. The scientists that created it have already run successful tests on animals and some COVID-19 patients in eastern and western Uganda. Now the government's own researchers will begin phase 2 of the trials with adult COVID-19 patients admitted at Mulago Hospital in the capital, Kampala. The oral syrup will only be rolled out after its efficacy has been proven.
So in the first 6 patients, every 2 hours, we will sample to see if the product given has actually reached the blood, and therefore it can reach and clear the virus and reduce the inflammation.
The product has already gone through a number of quality checks and got approvals for use in human beings, allowing for this new phase of trials to begin. The testing of products on humans is a long and vigorous process that comprises about 4 phases. If proven effective and safe for use, it will be one of the first homegrown solutions for the treatment of viral and bacterial infections like COVID-19 on the continent. The Natural Chemotherapeutic Research Institute says the 20 herbal ingredients that make up UBV-01N showed promising results when applied to COVID-19 patients. The remedies were supplied by 3 groups of traditional herbalist associations in Uganda.
The findings and outcome of the study will be shared with all stakeholders and the public from time to time. Your Excellency, as you are aware, there are many other studies that have been done elsewhere. But having our own homegrown study is extremely important.
The World Health Organization commends Uganda for following guidelines on the use of traditional medicines for therapeutics. The WHO guidelines that ensure the safety of products were recently developed after several African countries started the use of traditional medicine in COVID-19 treatment. The health agency says it's working closely with Ugandan scientists as it continues with the development of the drug. Uganda's intensive care units are stretched with the high numbers of severe cases of COVID-19, and this drug will hopefully be used in its treatment. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Further afield, the UK has announced a new quarantine policy for travellers arriving from high-risk countries. It's a bid to stop new variants of the coronavirus from spreading. But the tourism and aviation industries are worried about the move. Nawid Jabarkil has the latest now from London.
Welcome to the UK. Now head to your hotel room to quarantine. That's the message facing travellers from high-risk countries who'll be told to isolate for 10 days upon arrival. It'll affect British residents coming back from places where new variants of the virus are spreading, like South Africa and Brazil.
We will introduce a new managed isolation process in hotels for those who cannot be refused entry, including those arriving home from countries where we have already imposed international travel bans. They will be required to isolate for 10 days without exception.
Under the plans, those who quarantine will have to pay for it themselves. But with most foreign visitors already banned from coming to the UK, there are worries about how effective it'll be. Some ministers wanted to go even further and put travellers from all countries in hotels.
The tourism and aviation sectors are also worried about the move. London's Heathrow Airport, which was one of the busiest in the world before the pandemic, says the plan is unnecessary and could be catastrophic for an industry that's already on its knees.
Meanwhile, on British shores, the virus rages on. The UK's official death toll has passed 100,000 and continues to rise. Around half of those lives have been lost since early November. Some of Britain's top scientists say more decisive action sooner could have prevented some of those deaths. But facing lawmakers for the first time since the milestone was reached, the Prime Minister defended his choices.
And there has been no doubt that I and the government take full responsibility for all the actions I have taken, we've taken during this pandemic to fight this disease. And yes, Mr. Speaker, there will indeed be a time when we must learn the lessons of what has happened, reflect on them and prepare.
Today's decision on travel quarantines will go under the radar when compared to the sombre national mood. The deadly cost of COVID for the UK now in the six-figure range, with little sign of slowing down. Nawid Jabarkil, CGTN, London.
Now, a fight between the European Union and vaccine developer AstraZeneca is quickly escalating. They're pointing fingers at each other over the slow rollout of the coronavirus vaccine. Tony Waterman has the latest.
After days of tongue-lashing by Brussels, AstraZeneca's CEO came out swinging, laying the blame for a shortfall in vaccine deliveries at the EU's doorstep. In an interview with Italy's La Repubblica newspaper, Pascal Soriot said Europe was late to order the jab, 3 months behind the UK. And because of this, AstraZeneca only agreed to try its best without any guarantee it was going to succeed. AstraZeneca says the late start also means EU manufacturing facilities have been playing catch-up and are far less efficient in churning out doses than their UK counterparts. Soriot also denied that the company was diverting doses from the EU to other customers. The details of the contract, which secure up to 400 million doses of the vaccine for the bloc, have not been made public. But Brussels isn't backing down from demands that pharma companies deliver on their promises.
Let me be crystal clear. The 27 European Union member states are united that AstraZeneca needs to deliver on its commitments in our agreements. We are in a pandemic. We lose people every day.
AstraZeneca isn't the only pharma coming up short. Pfizer also said deliveries of its COVID-19 shot would be delayed. In a bid to ease supply shortages across the bloc, French drug maker Sanofi said it will open its manufacturing sites in Frankfurt to Pfizer and BioNTech this summer to help produce more than 125 million doses. The EU has struggled to ramp up its vaccine rollout with just over 2 doses administered per 100 people. That's compared to 11 in the UK and 7.5 in the US. The sluggish pace has provoked a backlash, now exacerbated by vaccine delivery delays. Germany wants the EU to grant member states the power to block the export of EU-manufactured vaccines. More details on the export control mechanism are expected by the end of the week. Tony Waterman, CGTN, Brussels.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has addressed day 3 of the virtual World Economic Forum. He warned that the world risks sliding deeper into instability from the pandemic and other global challenges. His concerns were echoed by top government and international organization officials. Andrew Wilson has more.
The streets of Davos are filled with snow but no people. This year's World Economic Forum took place not with helicopters and limousines, but remotely, online. Day 3 involved concerns from Russian President Vladimir Putin about the growth and influence of US social media giants.
Tech and, first of all, digital giants play an increasing significant role in society life. There is much talk about it now, especially in connection with the events that happened in the States during the election campaign.
This year's stage is set against a global pandemic resulting in more than 2 million deaths so far at a cost of at least $28 trillion to the global economy. And another year of extreme weather events that very few doubt are the result of human activity.
But we are reaching, at the same time, the limits of what climate, nature, but also the environment can cope with. So business as usual is no longer an option for my country and for many others in the same situation.
Throughout the past year, the world's weather has served only to confirm the bleakest scientific predictions about the climate changing. The reset theme throughout the forum focused repeatedly on partnership between countries, partnership between governments, but most important, better teamwork between private and public sector, and the need to go further than the Paris Agreement.
But even if we did everything that was promised in Paris, folks, the Earth's temperature is going to rise to 3.7 degrees. That's where Paris left off. And that's just because the conglomeration of all the things that people were willing to do just didn't add up to what we need to do.
Which puts pressure on the UK preparing to host that crucial COP26 climate summit in November.
But of course, it's not just public finance, it's also getting private money into tackling climate change. And the final thing I would just say on this particular issue is, of course, ensuring that we get everyone together as part of this campaign, this fight, and it's on all of us.
Even without the pandemic, 2021 was going to be a tough hill to climb. With coronavirus stalking the globe, that hill is now a mountain. Andrew Wilson, CGTN.
Let's now head to China, where a 40-day travel rush begins today for the Chinese New Year, also known as the Spring Festival. People across the country are starting to return to their hometowns for family reunions. China is expecting 1.7 billion passenger trips this year. That is a 10% increase from last year, but over 40% lower than before the pandemic in 2019, when nearly 3 billion trips were made. The travel rush is normally the biggest human migration in the world. Spring Festival falls on February the 12th this year, and ensuring health safety is a key focus for transportation supervisors. Well, the Spring Festival is normally a busy time for family reunions, but this year, given recent COVID-19 outbreaks in several parts of China, authorities are advising the public to avoid non-essential travel. Our reporter Cao Bing has more on this now.
Authorities say the guidelines are not a one-size-fits-all approach. For those in areas considered high risk, they're asked to stay at home. For medium-risk areas, people need a negative test result and permission from local epidemic prevention and control centers to travel. As for those living in low-risk areas, they are advised to avoid travel unless it's necessary. However, the guidelines are not mandatory. In the end, it is all up to the citizens themselves to make the final decision. There are actually concerns that the festive atmosphere will be spoiled, but that is not necessarily the case. Central and local governments have rolled out measures to try to keep people active during the biggest holiday of the year and to retain the holiday spirit. In terms of food supply, thousands of tons of reserve meat will be released to avoid price fluctuations. People are encouraged to exercise and keep fit during the holiday. Regional governments are also urged to increase outdoor and outline performances and recreational activities. And local governments and organizations have come up with the ways of keeping people entertained. Let's take Beijing, for example. People can apply for 20 gigabytes of data for free to enjoy shows online. So in conclusion, We're hoping for a happy Chinese New Year as usual, but in a different style.
Now, for many migrant workers, the Spring Festival is the only time of year they get to see their families. But this year, many are heeding the call to stay where they are. And some employers are raising wages during the holiday. Li Jianhua has the story.
There is around 2 weeks to go before the Lunar New Year, a time when most Chinese people return home to reunite with their families. But this year, the pandemic is likely to force many to stay put where they work. This year, nearly half of the migrant workers in Daishan, an island city in East China, are opting to stay put for the Lunar New Year. But this year has been tough, not least of all financially, and some admit they're only working during the important national holiday because they need to make more money.
Of course, I miss my home and I want to go back. We had several meetings telling us about the government's new policies about returning home this year. They're encouraging us to stay. You know, I had a family to raise.
It is not only Chinese people who are staying put. Tan Tianhui is from Singapore, where the Spring Festival is also observed, and he can't reunite with his family either.
I celebrated Chinese New Year with my families every year since I was young, and even when I started working in China, I used to go back. So for myself, because of the hectic schedule of the projects, I will personally stay back this time to work on the projects.
The company now has about 4,000 workers, and the manager hopes more will stay to make sure the project is completed on time. Each is being paid about $2,000 to work during the holiday.
First, the project has a strict deadline, and we are not allowed to postpone its completion. Second, as we all know, the pandemic is complicating the situation, so if we don't keep the numbers here, we may not have enough workforce after the New Year if anything happens.
It's estimated 1.7 billion trips will be made during this year's Spring Festival travel rush, 40% slower than 2019. Nucleic acid test results are needed to move around during the holiday, and in some places quarantine is required. With the government providing incentives to stay put, many are staying where they work for this year. Regardless, celebrating the Lunar New Year without family is unconventional by the Chinese standards. Li Jianhua, CGTN, Daishan, Zhejiang Province.
Stay with us here on Africa Live. The business news is up next.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Let's begin the business in Zimbabwe, where the country's stock exchange is expected to continue on an upward trajectory in 2021 against economic headwinds facing the country. The equities market was the best performing investment vehicle in 2020, registering a 968% growth in turnover. Here is Farai Mwakutuya with more details now from Harare.
While it's still early days yet, the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange seems to be living up to expectations and has picked up from where it left off last year.
I think looking at the performance of the African market so far, just from the past 2 weeks, we will see that already the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange was, I think, close to about 6% up, and this is in actual real returns. And my anticipation is that we should hold strong in that regard, for the rest of the year.
The dearth of viable investment options will continue to buoy the local bourse.
When you look at the money market, the interest rates that are being paid there, they are negative real interest rates.
when you compare them with inflation, where inflation is around 348%, and the interest rates that are being paid are between 30 to 70%. So you can actually see that investors will not recoup much in terms of interest earnings. The real estate sector, you can actually also see that it's very illiquid. People are holding on to sell in US dollars, and the prices in US dollars are not are too high for those who hold US dollars.
Unlike in previous years, local investors are expected to dominate activity. Concerns over the repatriation of dividends, as well as the abrupt closure of the exchange for 5 weeks last year, saw some jittery foreign investors take flight. The ZSE has lowered the minimum amount needed to invest to 500 Zimbabwe dollars, about $6 US, and set up a trading portal, paving the way for thousands of individuals to buy and sell shares directly.
Really, individual investors make up less than 5% of the participants on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange currently. So this is a great opportunity. Zimbabweans generally have a high propensity to save. And, once you've saved that money, you want to make sure that you don't just keep it in a place where it loses value because of inflation. You want to make sure that you find a home for it where it can grow. And so the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange does offer that opportunity.
The ZSC says about 20% of trades have come through the direct portal already and plans to make further improvements to see the volumes grow. Mahia Mutua, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
On to matters tourism now. Egypt is eyeing a gradual recovery after revenues plunged by nearly 70% to $4 billion in 2020 due to the coronavirus pandemic. The country's central bank extended waivers on debt interest payments for tourism sector companies and other businesses until the end of June in a bid to support the ailing industry. From Cairo, here is Yasser Hakim with more details.
The number of tourists visiting Egypt sank to 3.5 million last year from 13.1 million in 2019. This as the pandemic hammered the vital industry. Revenue plunged 70% year-on-year as foreign occupancy rates in Egyptian hotels dropped to just 10 to 15% of 2019 levels. It's this reason that the industry, which accounts for 15% of the national output and is a key source of foreign currency, will continue to receive the central bank's emergency fiscal funds during the second year of the pandemic.
Without the tourism support and the government support to all travel agencies and hotels, I doubt very much that so many people will survive. Accordingly to the Ministry of Tourism in Egypt, we have lots of programs for support for empty hotels and for encouraging the workers in the tourism field to recover and get some of their lost income.
Travel restrictions imposed to curb the spread of the virus have taken a toll on the global tourism industry. Airlines have had to impose strict anti-COVID measures in a bid to comply with the authorities' demands, amid the uncertainty caused by the pandemic.
Egypt, for example, requests PCR tests from arriving and departing passengers, so there's no need for border closures. Egypt has not closed down, and many other countries have also adopted a similar method. But unfortunately, the Europeans have tough travel restrictions. Why do so if a passenger can prove that they are COVID-19 negative? Travel restrictions should be eased, especially with the rollout of the vaccines. It is essential to revive international travel because this will promote trade, business and economics and not just tourism alone.
Europe is Egypt's largest tourist market, and there's optimism a quick vaccination process against the virus can speed up the resumption of travel. However, some in the industry expect recovery to remain slow.
Local travel have increased by 25%, but the average room rate will not be the same like receiving foreigners in same hotels. So it will take some time until we fully recover. I would say 2021 will not be the major year that will return all the losses. We believe in 2023 that the first quarter of 2023 that will give us an indication that the recovery will make something according to the situations that has to do with the pandemic.
Egypt has already started COVID-19 vaccinations this month after approving China's Sinopharm vaccine. The process is expected to make the North African state a safe tourist destination during the coronavirus. But until then, players working in the vital industry still have a bumpy road ahead. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
To Cameroon, and a local bus manufacturing plant is making a name for itself in the transport sector. Sotrabus, created to offer homegrown solutions, now supplies buses to 10 public transport companies in the Central Africa region. CGTN's Joy Kiruki Juma with the details.
Sotrabus is the first vehicle assembly unit in Central Africa. It specializes in the construction of 35 to 70-seater buses. Located in Douala, the economic capital of Cameroon, Sotrabus manufactures the skeleton and bodywork of buses. Its founder and CEO explains the idea behind the creation of the company.
We are part of the President of the Republic's emergency plan. We asked ourselves what we could do to put Cameroon on the path of emergency. Thus, we decided to create Strobus because we noticed that many transporters were importing their vehicles. Strobus will thus be able to allow Cameroon to be independent on this issue.
Mbafe says the company is locally financed.
There are no foreign shareholders in Strobus. It is a company under Cameroonian law, and it is 100% financed by the Cameroonians, and I am the boss.
The buses are used by several intercity transport agencies in Cameroon and Central Africa.
I placed the order for a bus and came to see the progress of the work. That's the big advantage with Sotrabus. With imported vehicles, this is almost impossible. It will certainly be necessary to make round trips by plane, and that is excessively expensive. At Sotrabus, we can ask the company during the manufacture of the bus to change parts or things we don't like, and they do it without any problem. We used to buy imported buses, but these buses were already used, and they made us believe that they were brand new ones. This made us lose a lot of our customers. It is fortunate for us that a Cameroonian promoter created a bus assembly back here home. Strabus buses are very good quality. There is also the after-sales service, which is very well provided. When you have a problem with your bus, you can go to Strabus workshops and they will do the necessary work for you.
To date, Sotrabus has already manufactured and sold nearly 300 buses in Cameroon alone. The company produces 4 to 5 buses per month. It also employs more than 250 people. But despite the encouraging results, Sotrabus is facing challenges.
We have foreign customers who want to buy our buses, but we have difficulty related to taxes. The materials we import are taxed at the port of Douala. When we manufacture the buses and we have to export them to our foreign customers, they still have to pay taxes in their country. So we asked the government for a favor which will allow us to manufacture and export our buses more easily.
The African market is dominated by imported second-hand vehicles. But that's a trend that companies like Sotrabus are trying to reverse. Joy Kiruki Juma, CGTN.
Now, foreign direct investment globally fell by 42% to an estimated $859 billion in 2020. This is compared to $1.5 trillion in 2019. In its latest investment trends monitor, UNCTAD, the UN body for trade and development, indicates that FDI finished 2020 more than 30% below the trough after the global financial crisis in 2009. It is being seen at levels last seen in the 1990s. The decline was concentrated in developed countries where foreign investment flows fell by 69% to an estimated $229 billion. Flows to Europe dried up completely, negative $4 billion, including large negative flows in several countries. A sharp decrease was also recorded in the United States, down 49% to $134 billion. The decline in developing economies was relatively measured, down 12% to an estimated $616 billion. Meanwhile, investment flows to Africa declined by 18% to an estimated $38 billion from around $46 billion in 2019. Overall, in North Africa, inflows fell by 32%, while Sub-Saharan Africa recorded an 11% drop. Morocco was, however, robust, with foreign investment almost unchanged at $1.6 billion. Egypt remained the top recipient of foreign direct investment in Africa, despite a significant decline in inflows by 39% to an estimated $5.5 billion. Inflows to Nigeria declined by 78%. Senegal was among the few economies with higher inflows in 2020, registering a 39% increase to $1.5 billion. That was supported by rising investments in energy. Foreign direct investment in South Africa fell by 54% to $2.5 billion from $4.6 billion in 2019. Now, distribution of a COVID-19 vaccine is expected to drive energy access across the continent this year. In their energy access trends for 2021, DRE Technologies analysts pointed out that tariffs, subsidies and vested interest will also play a huge role as far as who gets electricity. The analysts note that there is a growing number of countries in Western Africa looking to the private sector for power generation. Investors focused on energy access are also shifting to commercial and industrial investments. Well, it's just about time for us to check in on all the latest from the world of sport. Here's what's coming up. Morocco beat Angola in all-African showdown at the World Handball Championships in Cairo.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
You're watching breaking news on CGTN.
Welcome to the world today on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Let's turn to the ongoing World Handball Championships in Cairo, Egypt, where Morocco defeated Angola after a penalty shootout 30-29 in an all-African thriller on Wednesday. The fixture got off to a brisk